the first time this year, I'm going to try and do this talk without any additional light coming in. However, we'll see if it works. The clocks have just gone forward, so it should give me a little bit extra light. And you can see the light behind me. That's the sun on the wall. Today I'm going to talk about a doctor. Yeah, I always forget to do this, sorry. Turn my computer off. I've got my computer on in front of me so I can see questions and be able to answer them as they come in. Today I'm going to talk about one of the doctors who was at Auschwitz. Now, you've seen the photographs taken during the deportation of people from Hungary in May and June of 1944, these masses of people coming off these trains, and the doctors who are there at Birkenau deciding who's going to live and who's going to die. There were usually around 5 to 10, a maximum of 10 doctors who were on duty. Of course, they had to be on duty all the time because trains came in all parts of the times of the day, or at least be on standby at all times. And you can imagine a situation where you have 5,000 people plus on a train, and then there's maybe say a maximum of 10 doctors. So you've got these 10 doctors, and they were genuine doctors. That this wasn't a name given to them. They had to decide who's going to live and who was going to die by saying them one way or the other. So this examination as such took place, in a space of maybe 10 seconds, allowing, say, even at the best case scenario, 500 people to get through. Well, how long is that going to take? It's a mathematical question there. So it's 15 seconds a person. That says that's 4 people a minute. Well, anyway, so from there one can do a calculation. It's getting over 2 hours to get through the entire. And bear in mind that more trains would be coming in. We know from the documentation at Auschwitz that the killing, not so much the killing capacity, but the destruction of corpses capacity was around 4,800 a day. And we also know, though, at the time of the maximum arrivals, which happened in June of 1944, that more people that were coming through, and they resorted to open pits to burn these corpses. Now, the doctors themselves, as I said, were real doctors, and here I'm going to talk about one of them. His name was Horst Paul Silvester Fischer, and he is, I wouldn't say he was one of the least well known, because there's some that just aren't known at all, but maybe he doesn't have the fame that Josef Mengele had, but he was friends with Mengele, and he gave a lot of information about Mengele to the East German authorities in 1965. Anyway, Horst Fischer was responsible for around 70,000 deaths. That's what he was accused of. Anyway, so he was born 31st December 1912 in Dresden. His parents died very early, and he went to live with relatives in Berlin as an orphan. Now, his uncle was a nationalist, and unfortunately, this nationalism came off on his nephew, and as a result, this sort of led him to his eventual disaster. The young Fischer, he belonged to the Bündische Jugend, a national scouting organization, and in 1932, after he finished school, he went to study medicine at the University of Berlin, which he completed in 1937. Now, on the 1st November 1933, he joined the SS, and so he was 20 years old, he was at university, and so this may have seemed like a spot of fun for him, at the same time as being part of the as far as being part of I don't know, his nationalist ambitions. He didn't join the Nazi Party until 1937, and so you could actually join the SS or the SA without being a member of the Nazi Party. And there'll be someone else I mentioned in this talk here that that was in a similar situation. Now, when the war started, as being a member of the SS and being a doctor, he was initially sent to Oranienburg, that is the Inspectorate of Concentration Camps, which is just next to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, at the T building, and then he was at Dachau and then Stralsund. Stralsund was just a normal base for Waffen SS. He didn't see any action in the Western campaign or the Polish campaign, but he did take part on the attack on the Soviet Union. And whilst he was there, he got pulmonary tuberculosis. And so this is a disease spread by bacteria. And this, I think, was the reason why he was sent then to be a sanatorium to recover. And this care can take quite a long time. And he appears to have been looked after for some time at all. Now, Enno Lolling was he's not very well known. I don't think very few people have heard of him, but he was the boss of all the concentration camp doctors. He was based at the T building at Oranienburg, and so he was the head of the Office D3, so the medical camp services and hygiene, and therefore he was the one who was responsible for all the doctors who took part in criminal activity, including those who did the selections when people were to be gassed at Auschwitz. And anyway, I've got a quote. Lolling told doctors that they had to be present at mass murder, that they had no choice in the matter, and it was their duty to be there. And anyway, so when he got ill, I looked at his record, and so I found that he was ill between May, June, and July. Sorry, no, May, June, beginning of July. 2 months he was ill, and then he. So this, I presume that he must have met Fischer at this moment, and he made the offer to Fischer to go and work in one of the camps, and Fischer accepted it, and so he was then sent to Auschwitz. Now, as far as Auschwitz is concerned, there are cases where people were sent there, guards, staff, and they didn't know what was going on there. There's one doctor, he went there, think it was just some normal camp, and he brought along his wife with him. However, in the case of Fischer, I very much doubt it. I'm sure that Lolling briefed him very, very clearly. Now, Lolling himself, he was born in 1888, and he was a member of the SA as early as 1923. Although he lived in northern Germany, he'd been a ship's doctor during the First World War, either based on ships or then based in the base at Moorvik. And he'd had this nationalist background. He didn't join the Nazi Party until 1937, despite his early affiliation with the party, the SA, and he must have then have been a member. But remember that the Nazi Party was made illegal after the putsch of 9th November 1923, and it was reformed, and lots of people didn't join the reformed party. Now, Lolling himself, he committed suicide at the end in May 1945, then the Second World War. He was then 56 years old, and he liked the bottle quite a lot, and I think he wasn't in any condition to sort of try running away. So now the person in charge at Auschwitz of the doctors, somebody called Edward Wirths, and he was a friend of Fischer. They'd known each other for some time. Now, Wirths is not at all known. I mean, Mengele, everybody's heard of him, but the boss of Mengele was Wirths. And Wirths had something similar, a similar problem to both Fischer and Mengele. Mengele was injured in the Soviet campaign, the war against the Soviet Union. Fischer got tuberculosis, and Wirths had got a heart problem. And so as far as he was concerned, so he was then invalided out of the army. He went to Dachau in April 1942. Then from there, he was supposed to be head doctor at Neuengamme, which is near Hamburg, in July of 42. And the 1st of September 42, he was posted to Auschwitz. Now, clearly, he had crimes which he committed. I mean, he was there was a thing called Action 14F 3 and F13, and he was. This was the murder of the older, the sick, or those for whatever reason couldn't work, And so he actually then he chose these people and he had them murdered. He also was in charge of the newly arriving prisoner transport, and he made the selections himself, particularly when there was a lot of work on. So a lot of people, transports coming in, so they needed doctors to do that. He was the one responsible for selecting prisoners from medical experience. Sorry, that's not English. That's French. For medical experiments, and he was also the person responsible for hygiene conditions. And here he did actually try to improve hygiene conditions at the camp. And this is something which may seem, you got this murderer killing all these people, but then he's trying to save lives by improving hygiene conditions at the camp. And it's strange actually, because also in the case of others, we see them like Fischer, for example. He actually falsified a medical record to ensure that one person he liked at Auschwitz wouldn't be killed. And so there is this sort of this mixture. He was got like Mengele. He got out of Auschwitz just before the Soviets came, but in his case, he was posted then to Mittelbau Dora, then went to Bergen-Belsen, Neuengamme. He was detained by the Americans in 1945, and then he committed suicide. Now Wirths, as I say, is totally unknown, unlike the others. So in the case of Fischer, though, he didn't go directly to Auschwitz. Now, if you have a look at the map, you'll see that there's lots of coal mines in the vicinity. There were also a number of POW camps, and his job was therefore to look after the SS. But not just the SS, but also the people who were in these coal mines. I mean, they could be slave laborers, or alternatively, they could also be POWs. And there were British POWs who probably were treated by Fischer whilst he was there. Now, at some time, he was moved from this area, this Janina Gruber and Jawowice camps in the area of Auschwitz to Auschwitz-Monowitz. That was Bunawerke. This was a factory which made synthetic rubber, and so he was taken there, and he was the camp doctor at this IG Farben site, and he was working there as from November 1943 at the latest. But in this case, he's now being directly involved in deciding which people are to be murdered. So there are these slave laborers working in this largely built to order factory for IG Farben and producing war materials, and then they are so slave laborers working there, but after a while, when they can no longer work, what happens to them? They get kicked out and murdered because they can't do the heavy work. And from there, probably just before the massive deportation of Hungarian people, Hungarian Jews, to Auschwitz, he was moved to Auschwitz to be the deputy site doctor at Auschwitz Birkenau, and so therefore he would be at the ramp. Now we know that there weren't enough doctors at Auschwitz to be on call to decide who's going to live and who's going to die, and it was such a situation that Edward Wirths demanded also that the pharmacists had to be at the ramp to decide these things as well. And Wirths changed the system from having 24-hour shifts to having 12-hour shifts. And unfortunately, we do have a situation also that they would, because of the nature of the work, they'd be taken to drink as well. So that whilst they're deciding who's going to live and who's going to die, they're in a state of intoxication. So this through a drunken haze. So anyway, on the 21st of June 1944, Fischer was promoted to Hauptsturmführer, which was its captain approximately, and so that made him one of the highest ranking SS doctors in Auschwitz. And so I'll come on to the questions at the end, as always, and all the comments. And anyway, in September 1944, he was moved away from Auschwitz, and he was succeeded by Hans Wilhelm König in his role. But he not only at Auschwitz, also at Auschwitz Monowitz, he ordered punishments, mainly whippings, for small infractions of camp rules, and the whipping itself could lead to death, and it frequently did lead to death. Or alternatively, a person could be so weak after being whipped that they then were sent to the gas chambers, or to be shot because they were too weak. Now, Fischer did say this. It was reported that he said, "We've gone so far that we can no longer go back." That is to say that I think, something like this is that there's this murderous machine, and because these murders are taking place and continuing, that they are no longer able to stop, because atrocity begets atrocity. Continuing to kill becomes a psychological necessity in order to justify the killings that have already taken place. Now, Mengele and Fischer were good friends. In fact, they'd met in the summer of 41, and both of them had been doctors in the SS Viking division. And it was Fischer said the following about Mengele. He said, "During our first meeting, which was very superficial and short, Mengele gave the impression of a humble man, very closed and composed. Next time, when we met in Auschwitz, we often met outside of work hours, attended celebrations with other SS doctors. Contrary to my initial impression in Auschwitz, Mengele was full of confidence and took the lead in conversations. Of all of us, he was the most convinced of the need to exterminate the Jews." Now, Mengele himself was a conspiracy theorist. Mengele came from a very privileged background. His family owned the Mengele plant, which today is part of a shopping center in Gunzburg. The Mengele company was sold to a Dutch company, name of which I've forgotten now. Well, it will come back to me when I finish. And it was a company town. Just about everybody in Gunzburg worked either directly or indirectly for the Mengele. And often when you travel around, I often see agricultural equipment from Mengele. So it was he came from a very, very privileged and wealthy background. So it's normally that you expect these conspiracists to come from uneducated and poor backgrounds. In his case, it was slightly different from most, because he argued that there were two sort of strong master races. Ones were Germans, the other ones were Jews, and if one had to destroy. If one had to destroy the other, otherwise they'd both be wiped out. Mengele's opinion was that the Jews of Galicia, who were responsible for Germany's defeat in World War I. Now, just immediately after World War I, there was, because of the situation in Poland and indeed the Russian Civil War, there was a lot of Jewish immigrants came into Germany. These were Galician Jews. They had sort of beards and unusual clothes, and they stood out as being different from the others. And so part of what the Nazis were blaming for the problems with these people, I think, to a large extent. There may have been as many as 200,000 people actually immigrated into Germany following the end of World War I. May have been approximately. Nobody was keeping numbers. Mengele was somebody said that really had to be at the ramp all the time, and he was one who was always volunteering it, and he would actually extend his shift. And it was Mengele, as is known, was demanding twins, and he was really enthusiastic about what he termed his scientific work he was doing at Auschwitz, and he often showed people photographs of what he was doing, the experiments he was carrying out. He'd set up a pathological unit next to Crematorium 2, the gas chamber at Birkenau. And he had another doctor working below him. He had a taxidermist working below him, and he kept his body parts, which he was actually doing doing there. So the fact that Fischer knew so much about Mengele could have been extremely useful later if the information was actually used. Now, nearly everybody in the SS had their blood group tattooed on them. Now, Mengele actually refused it, and I can understand why. Not only is having a tattoo, so it would mark someone out. It sort of also, I think, sort of in a certain way, it defaces the body, and that's how Mengele actually looked at it as well. So he didn't want it for reasons of pride. In the case of Fischer, he got rid of it for reasons that he didn't want to be identified as a doctor. After the war, he found himself in the Soviet zone, and he decided that he changed his name. And he near Brandenburg and the Havel. It's a very nice area around there, Lakeland. And he then moved to Spreenhagen, Fürstenwalde, as he was a country doctor. He got married, he had 4 children, and perhaps that he thought that everything's gone, it's all in the past, and he can actually get on with his life, and everybody's going to leave him in peace. The thing is that in West Germany, there were investigations into Auschwitz, and in 1959, his name came up as one of the doctors that was on the ramp. And on the 6th of April 1960, the War Crimes Investigations Unit at Ludwigsburg, which is near Stuttgart, issued a warrant for his arrest, but it didn't know where he was, so it was a bit pointless. Now, in 1960, the border at Berlin was still open. You could get on the S-Bahn or the U-Bahn, and you could travel between the two, or you could even walk across the border. This was relatively easy to do. It was not so easy on the inter-German border between what was by then West and East Germany. Anybody who left normally they went over the border at West Berlin. I had friends in Berlin who in 1959 he had a friend in Tübingen, I think it was, and he got a plane. He was living somewhere near. Can't remember anyway, it was somewhere to the southeast of Berlin. And anyway, so his friend invited him, and he went there to visit him, but getting a plane from Berlin. And then there was something stopped him actually going back. He had a minor problem, and then he was due to go back on the 15th of August 1961. And because the wall went up in the meantime, the first thing he thought was, I'm not going back. And so he didn't go back. The sudden appearance of the wall was, I think, a surprise to most people. Although, having said that, I think it was Ulbricht who said, we've got no intention of building a wall a couple of days earlier. As far as Fischer was concerned, I think the Stasi was looking at him, but not so much that because he was a Nazi criminal, because they thought he didn't like the regime in East Germany. He was said to have made some anti-East German remarks in West Berlin, and this came to their attention. Now, whether or not he said them or not, or whether or not, which I suspect somebody sort of, what they had these spies all over the place, they had to report something, so they said this. And in his case, it was that he'd said something anti-East Germany. But in any case, the Stasi was looking at him. But in the meantime, the West Germans who had issued the arrest warrant contacted the East Germans. And sometimes this contact worked very well. Information was handed over without any problems, particularly west to east, but sometimes east to west as well was handed over. Less so east to west, but West Germany has quite openly handed things over. And you've got the case of Josef Bloscher as well, the criminal from the Warsaw Ghetto who was arrested slightly later than Fischer was. And on the 11th of June 1965, Stasi came around to Fischer's house, claiming they were investigating a hit-and-run accident for which they blamed him because he knew he didn't do it, so he didn't offer any resistance or anything. And they took him away, and when they got him in the Hohenschönhausen prison, they told him he was there because of crimes committed at Auschwitz. And they interrogated him over a period of 7 months. Now, he's going to come to trial. Trial takes place in March 1966, and I think he was set up. His lawyer was a person who was, well, we now know he was a Stasi agent. Maybe that wasn't known at the time, but he was involved in all sorts. He was a lawyer involved in all sorts of underhand activity. Now, the trial was before the Supreme Court of East Germany under the chairmanship of Heinrich Toeplitz. Now, Toeplitz was born 5th of June 1914 in Berlin. He studied law at Breslau, now Wrocław, but he wasn't allowed to practice law because of the Nuremberg laws. And so he fled Nazi Germany in 1938, but he returned during the war. Why he returned during the war, I can't say. He wasn't allowed to serve in the Wehrmacht, but he was conscripted into the Todt organization, and he worked as a construction worker, first in France, then in Netherlands. At the end of the war, he was taken prisoner by the Soviets. He must have gone back east, and then he was released. He was a member of the People's Chamber, which is the pseudo parliament of East Germany, and he was a member also of the Supreme Court. Now, coming back to the lawyer, Wolfgang Vögel. He, I think he's even there's a film called Bridge of something or other. But anyway, I think he's even one of the characters in that. So he's known for these prisoner exchanges, being the fixer for the prisoner exchanges. And because of that, this was a show trial. Now, at the same time, 1965, you've had the Auschwitz trials, you've had the Treblinka trials around the same part. And what they wanted to do in East Germany was to show, West Germany's the new Nazi Germany. The Nazis get off scot-free, whereas we actively seek out and punish Nazi criminals. Now, we now know that's not true. We can look at the statistics, and the statistics will show something completely different. Of course, it was more likely that a criminal would flee to West Germany than to East Germany. But I think we can see now, it's my opinion, that a lot of people got away scot-free. Now, of the executions that occurred in East Germany, I would say, having looked at the list of people who were executed, a good third were and possibly more were executed because of Nazi-era crimes. I could have actually counted it up, but I didn't do that. But anyway, I might do it in the future, so see how accurate. I'll say at least a third, put it that way. So Fischer actually cooperated. There was very little evidence against him. And although the West Germans had handed over the information that they had on him. Now, one of the things was the company IG Farben. IG Farben was broken up after the end of the Second World War, but the company still exists. I mean, BASF, for example, Höchst, both parts of IG Farben. And there's a couple of other companies which still exist, which were part of it as well. And the IG Farben itself, it only came together in the crisis in the early 20s because this sort of banded a number of companies together in an industrial conglomerate. So what they wanted to do is to blame the capitalist system and in general. So this became part of the Soviet or communist, I should say, propaganda. Fischer fully cooperated. You can see there are parts of it. The trial was the whole trial was filmed. I mean, parts of it are available, and you can see how he cooperates. He explains things, how people were brought into the camp and what happened to them. He's absolutely open about it. He admitted that the murders were taking place. He said that deportees were exploited for the slave labor until they're no longer capable of working, and then they were gassed. He said all of this. but it was for no avail. He was sentenced to death. Plea for clemency was sent to Ulbricht, Walter Ulbricht, the chairman of the State Council, the boss, the dictator. So Fischer was executed. In the video I did on Fischer, I said that he was the last person to be executed by guillotine outside of France. That is not correct. The last person to be executed by guillotine in East Germany was a rapist and murderer, but that happened in 1967. Anyway, so I got that wrong, but I'm saying it now. On the 8th of July 1966, he was actually executed by guillotine. One thing I just learned, sort of coming off slightly off the point here, is because when I've done a number of videos related to executions and justice inside the Third Reich, and it came to me when I was doing it, occurred to me that the guillotine seemed a particularly efficient means of execution, because it's quick and there's no chance really of it actually going wrong. I came across documents today from East Germany saying that there had been failures in the system, which is why East Germany stopped using the guillotine as its method of execution. It went over for the shot in the neck around 1967-68. So it wasn't as efficient as it may have seemed to have been. Now, as far as war crimes are concerned and East Germany, I've got I would like to say this. East Germany was in existence for what? From 7th of October 49, 3rd of October 1990. 15 criminals from Auschwitz were sentenced, and the death penalty was imposed on 2 of them. I'm just talking about Auschwitz because there were other things such as the Czestochowa ghetto and other Nazi criminals. But so of these 15, 3 got longish prison sentences and 10 were amnestied. Now in West Germany, as far as Auschwitz is concerned, 1 trial. I mean, you've got 23 perpetrators getting long or life sentences and 5 trials in the 60s, 70s, and 1981. So I personally think that West Germany did more. Having said that, I mean, the life sentence in West Germany was 15 years. And after that, it became open to review. Now, there were people such as Kurt Franz from Treblinka who was sentenced. His review was turned down several times. But in effect, I mean, it's a very short life sentence in West Germany. Anyway, good. So that's my expose there on Mr. Fischer. I might actually do another video on him one day, though, because that's where I'll come now onto the points here. Sorry if I can get onto it. And right, so hello, Elena Craig. Trisha says, I always wonder how many more guards at the concentration camps didn't get deathly ill. Heck, when I was working with the public, I got sick often, and that's in a clean environment. Yeah, I'm always, I've got a great deal of admiration for doctors, people coming up to them who are really ill all the time. You go to the doctor's surgery, you think, I mean, what's the chance of anything happening to me when I'm in here? And I get the impression that you should only go to the doctors when you're super fit and super well. There were a lot of doctors that got ill and guards that got ill at the camps. This was quite normal. I mean, there's even cases of the guards dying of diseases such as typhus. Now, these typhus to a large extent is the product of bad water, of living conditions, and in general, it is the reduction of the body's ability to resist diseases. And I think that is a very very common thing you see in people. Why they get ill is the body can't actually put up with it. Anyway, that I'm not suggesting that's the answer to all, because that would put me in the Rudolf Hess sort of school of medicine if I suggested that was the only reason. But I suggested that's a very important reason. So Donald Trump, I'm not certain if it's the real one or not, or the Russian doctors trial 1953. Of course, Stalin was trying to get rid of one nationality after another, and he turned on the Jews in 1952. And there was this trial in 1953, which wasn't a particularly good idea, because when Stalin himself came to die, there wasn't anybody suitable to actually look after him. So Guten Morgen, Big, and Mengele was just a low-ranking officer collecting specimens for Wilhelms Institute Berlin to Professor Verschuer, says Donald. Okay, well, Mengele wasn't a low-ranking officer. He had bear in mind, it depends if you see that he certainly wasn't friends with Hitler or Goebbels or anything like that, but his rank was sufficiently high to put him in a position of a great deal of authority, and indeed over the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. So hello, Egg. Jeff says, did not Nazi war criminals fare much worse in East Germany and other Eastern European countries than West Germany as the prosecution? Well, I think what Jeff's question here is relating to the sentences that they were given. Now, certainly in Poland, for example, there were you got 1940s, you've got these cases end up in death sentences. Now, in West Germany, the death penalty was abolished as part of the base law. It's constitutionally. There was one guard from Sobibor who was sentenced to death, and his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He had the bad luck to be recognized by two of the escapees from Sobibor while he was at a fun fair in Berlin in 1946. So if they were arrested in West Germany, we've also got the cases of the people who were sentenced by the American military tribunal, those who were in Landsberg, these Einsatzgruppe, for example, who were let off effectively. They had their death sentences commuted, and then after a few years, they were out. And it's Martin Sandberger. I know I keep mentioning him, but Sandsberger, who was sentenced to death, and then he was released in 1957, and because he used his old contact, he got himself various jobs in corporations in the area, and he ended up dying in a rather expensive place in Stuttgart. Though having said that, there was somebody who wrote in one of my comments, said, look, it's not as good as you think it is there. Well, it was costing €2,000 a month, so it can't have been that bad. Anyway, I think I've come off the point there. Yeah, I think it was worse if you got caught in the East than if you got caught in the West. But the big thing about the difference is this, as in the East, usually people were given the chance of actually working for the system. So if they worked for the system, they became a spy. One of the things noticed, for example, in Auschwitz in the immediate post-war period, is that clearly many of those which had collaborated with the Nazis in the murder of Jews then were working for the communist authorities. They were given this choice: either collaborate with us, or you could face trial. And I think that this is the case. In the case of Fischer, this is clearly a show trial. There were other show trials put on in East Germany. And the point of view of a show trial is normally for propaganda purposes, I think. Anyway, I hope I've answered that. Gary asks, the lawyer's trial gets my goat the most. You can get lawyers to face justice, which is why our government is full of them. Yeah, sorry, you can't get lawyers to face justice, which is why our government is full of them. Yeah, the thing is this, most people in any parliament in the world are lawyers. And the thing is then they write the law, and then other people can't interpret it. I mean, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you've got people who build cars, right, they then write the manuals, and let's suppose that the manuals then are open to interpretation. I mean, how come lawyers make such mistakes? Well, either A, it's deliberate to keep them in business, or B, they're no good at what they do. But I think that one about the car manuals has been good. Yeah, John asks, how many camps did Mengele actually work in? Many thanks. Right, well, the main one was Auschwitz. He then, from Auschwitz, he went to Gross Rosen. I have written something. Sorry, I started it in 2018. I still haven't finished it. I started writing about Mengele's escape, and I started visiting the places he went to. That 2018, 7 years I've been on this. And I wanted to do a video following through the places he's at. But effectively, at Gross Rosen, he wasn't there very long, and I don't think he really did anything. He then he went west. He was in the area of the Ore Mountains, which is on the Czech-German border. He crossed the border, and he handed himself over to the Americans, and he was in 2 POW camps. Indeed, I need to point out was one when I was planning this video although this was 2020 in March 2020. I wrote to the mayor of one of these small towns, and the mayor himself said he'd take me there and show me where the camp was. And anyway, I think that was when COVID started, so unfortunately there was no visits, and I still haven't really been back. Yeah, Gary asks, right, why did the men at Helmno, including T4 personnel, get silly sentences? Yeah, I can't answer that one. The sentences should have been larger. Yeah, most of them are ridiculous. In some cases, it's sort of understandable that if you got the case of Josef Oberhauser, which isn't Helmno, of course, Auschwitz, but he got 4 years for his participation in murders at Auschwitz, whereas that took in because a life sentence in Germany was 15 years, and as he'd already served part his time in East Germany, therefore he couldn't be granted any longer period. But as for why, I think it's ridiculous, some of the sentences that were. I can recall seeing on the news at the time of the Majdanek trial, which was 77, is that people at the time, they said that they felt the victims, the people who've been in these places, felt as though they were on trial. Indeed, Toiva Blatt, who I lived with there was one case when the lawyer in one trial, he was really trying to get him to describe. He saw people being beaten, and he was trying to get him to describe the stick exactly. It was trying to make his evidence seem less worthy. Now, in my opinion, there are ways of actually trying to make evidence less worthy, rather than sort of attack him personally, as this came out. In the case of this, sorry, Gary, I can't give you an answer to that one. I don't know. That's sorry. I'll come back to this though, because actually I have written something recently on Helmno, and I've written on 2 of the escapees, and I'll come back to that. Yeah, who killed Wagner? Oh dear. I have something on that subject. I don't know if I should say it though. I think I know you. Sorry, I'm aware of something on this, but I don't think I can say it. It's anyway. I'm sorry. I don't think I can give my opinion of this one. Sorry, I'm gonna have to pass on this one. Though it's not, I don't know. It's for legal reasons. Although having said, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Just that I was told something. The source was a reliable one. Anyway, sorry. Okay. So with that, which I may reveal 1 or 2 little things in the future, but that's a good question, Gary. Thanks for asking. Thank you for asking. You can write your own answers down though to that one, for which I will of course not give a response. Thanks so much for listening and being with me. Look, I do need the light on now, but that's quite good, isn't it, really? Here it is now 1944. I've got my computer on Central European time. For those of you in the United States, oh, you asked me on Facebook once. Sorry, okay, right. I got, well, then you have my answer from Facebook. I know the United States and Canada, I think you changed hour a bit differently to when we changed. So this video hasn't been done at the same time as the others, but we're now on the same time, and it's 2000 hours Central European time, 1900 hours in the United Kingdom. Here in Europe, we will stay at this time until the last Saturday in October. And so that'd be that. Okay, Gary says that I told him someone broke my conversation on it. Okay. Okay then. So I shall leave it at that. Tomorrow, I was thinking about what I wanted to do tomorrow. I had this idea. I might do something on the death penalty in Poland after the war. I might do something on the ship, the biggest naval disasters of all time. I don't know. It depends what I feel like. I'll put it up tomorrow. Thanks very much for all of you who were here today. And for the moment, best wishes from me, and bye for now.